Hope you enjoy your walk back home, Grandma." Those were the last words I heard before my daughter Emma and her husband Brad drove away, leaving me standing alone on an empty dirt road in the middle of the Egyptian desert. The dust from their car made a big cloud as they disappeared. They were laughing like it was all a funny joke. But they did not know something very important. I owned a company worth $330 million. And what they just did proved they should never get any of it. If you are watching this right now, please click the subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you are watching from. Let me tell you my story about how a 70-year-old grandmother from Ohio ended up alone in the hot desert, and how my own family's greedy plans became the worst mistake they ever made. Believe me, this story will surprise you in ways you cannot imagine. Everything started 4 months ago when my husband William died without any warning. A big truck hit his car on the highway. We had been married for 45 years, and losing him felt like someone took half of my heart away. But William had been very smart with money his whole life, and he made sure I would be okay after he was gone. The lawyers told me it was enough money to take care of many families for a very long time. Emma had never been a warm and loving daughter, even when she was a little girl. She moved far away to Arizona after she finished school and only called me on Christmas and my birthday, and usually she was asking for money when she did call. The requests started small after William died. "Can you help me pay my electric bill, Mom? My car broke down and I need money to fix it. My credit card bill is too high this month." But then the requests got bigger and bigger and came more and more often. When she suddenly showed up at William's funeral with her new husband Brad, saying she wanted to spend more time with me and help me feel better, I should have known something was wrong. But when you are sad and lonely, you want to believe that people love you. Brad was very different from Emma. He smiled all the time, said nice things, and acted like he really cared about me. He was also 8 years older than my 24-year-old daughter, which worried me a little bit. But he had this special way of making you feel like you were the most special person in the whole world. Now I understand that people who trick others are very good at acting nice. But back then I did not see it. There were many warning signs that I missed for weeks and weeks. Emma kept asking me strange questions about William's will and how much money we had saved. She also kept telling me that I should change my will and let younger people help me make decisions about money. "Dorothy, you have always wanted to visit Egypt," Brad said one day when they came to visit me at my house in Ohio. "The big pyramids, the Nile River, all that old history you love so much." Emma and I were thinking, what if we make that dream come true? A family trip to help us all feel close again. I felt so happy when he said that. For 38 years, William always said we would go see the pyramids together someday. Now Brad was offering to take me there when my own daughter never did. What I did not know was that they had spent weeks looking up information about Egyptian laws and bank rules and how long it takes before someone who goes missing is called dead. Brad had told Emma that I was going to give all my money to animal shelters and hospitals instead of to her. He made me sound like a mean old woman who did not care about family. But the real truth was much simpler. Brad owed money to dangerous people because he liked to gamble, and Emma wanted to keep her older husband so badly that she would do anything he asked, even if it meant leaving her own mother to die alone in the hot desert. We flew into Cairo on September 20th. The first few days felt like magic. We saw the big Sphinx, walked around the pyramids, and took a boat ride on the Nile River. Brad acted like the perfect son-in-law. He took lots of pictures of Emma and me together and kept saying we need to make memories that last forever. Now I understand why he wanted so many photos. He needed proof that I was alive and happy when we started the trip. On our 5th day in Egypt, Brad said we should rent a car and drive to see the real Egypt away from all the tourists. He told us he found this amazing village where Bedouin people live, where we could see what life in the desert is really like. Emma looked nervous and scared, but Brad was so excited about it that I said yes. We drove for many hours into the desert. The land around us got more and more empty with each mile. Brad talked and talked the whole time, pointing at things and keeping everyone happy. I sat in the back seat with a small bag I brought for day trips. I had my sunglasses and hat on to protect me from the bright sun, and I was actually having fun. Then suddenly the car stopped moving. "The engine is broken," Brad said as he opened the hood of the car. "Dorothy, can you please get that toolbox from the trunk?" I got out of the car to help him, And that is when I heard both car doors slam shut hard. When I turned around fast, Brad was already getting back into the driver's seat. Emma sat in the front passenger seat, and she would not look at my face. "Brad, Emma, what is happening?" I asked. I felt confused and scared. "Sorry, Dorothy," Brad yelled out the window. His nice voice was completely gone now. "Nothing personal here. But we need that money right now. Not 20 years from now when you finally die." Emma finally looked at me, and I could see the truth in her eyes. This was not something they just decided to do. They had been planning this for a long time. "Emma," I said, trying to keep my voice calm even though I was shaking. "Whatever he promised you is not worth doing this. Good luck finding your way back," she said, and then she laughed. But her laugh sounded fake and scared. Brad was already turning the car around in the sand, and then they drove away fast, leaving me standing there with nothing except my small bag that had 1 bottle of water, some crackers, sunscreen, and the clothes I was wearing. The quietness of the desert was so loud it hurt my ears. As I watched their car disappear and the dust settle, something strange happened inside me. Instead of being scared and crying, I almost wanted to laugh. If Emma and Brad thought they were dealing with some helpless old grandma who could not take care of herself, they were about to learn they were very, very wrong. You do not live for 45 years married to a man as smart as William without learning a thing or two about how to make plans and solve problems. And they just made the biggest mistake of their entire lives. But first I needed to not die in the desert. Standing all alone in the Sahara Desert with the sun burning down on my head like fire, most people would have panicked and cried. I will not lie to you. For the first few minutes, I felt like someone punched me in the stomach when I realized what Emma and Brad had really done. My own daughter had just tried to kill me. But then my practical Ohio common sense kicked in hard. Being scared and panicking was something I could not afford to do right now. I had water that would last maybe half a day, some crackers that would not fill me up, and sunscreen in my bag. The nearest town or village could be 10 miles away or it could be 100 miles away. There was no way to know. Time to figure out what to do first. I looked all around me, thinking about what I had and what I needed. The road we had been driving on was barely even a road. It was more like tire marks in the sand that could blow away in the next windstorm. The land was harsh and mean, but it was not completely empty. I could see some small plants far away, which meant there might be water somewhere nearby. My husband William used to say that being smart means knowing what you do not know. Well, I did not know very much about how to survive in the desert, but I knew enough about science and how the human body works to give myself a chance to live. First thing I needed to do was get out of the sun. I found some big rocks that made a little bit of shade and sat down to think clearly. Emma and Brad expected me to die out here in the desert, which meant they had to have a plan for what to do next. They would need time to get back to the city, tell the police I was missing, and somehow get into William's bank accounts to take the money. That is where their plan had a giant hole in it. They knew I had lots of money, but they had no idea how William had set up all our finances to protect everything. My husband was very worried about greedy family members trying to steal money after he died, probably because he saw it happen to his own father when he was young. Every single important thing we owned was locked up in special trusts with rules that even I did not completely understand. Emma and Brad were about to find out that stealing from dead people is not nearly as easy as they thought it would be. But I am getting ahead of myself. Right then in that moment, my biggest worry was staying alive long enough to see their faces when they realized what a huge mistake they made. As the afternoon went on and the sun moved across the sky, I drank my water very carefully, just tiny sips, and tried to remember everything I ever read about surviving in the desert. The temperature would drop a lot at night and get very cold. That could actually help me. I needed to save my energy during the hot day and walk at night when it was cooler and I would not sweat so much. When the sun started to go down and painted the desert in beautiful orange and red colors, I started walking. I followed the faint tire tracks in the sand, hoping they would take me somewhere, anywhere where there were people. The desert at night is completely different from the daytime. The quiet is so complete that it feels like you are the only person left in the whole world, except sometimes you hear the wind blowing across the sand. The stars are so bright and clear that they almost hurt your eyes, and the cold cuts through your clothes like knives after the burning heat of the day. I walked for many hours, stopping a lot to rest and check which direction I was going by looking at the North Star. Thank goodness my father taught me how to find my way using the stars when I was a little girl. My feet hurt so bad in my tourist sandals and my water bottle was almost empty, but I kept walking and walking. Just when the sun was starting to come up again, when I was beginning to think maybe I made a terrible mistake by leaving my little shelter by the rocks, I saw something far away in the distance. It was buildings. They were old and falling apart, probably nobody lived there anymore, but they were definitely made by people. It turned out to be a small Bedouin village that had been empty for many years. Most of the buildings were broken and crumbling, but there were still some walls standing, and best of all, there was an old well right in the middle of the village. I had never been so happy to see dirty water in my entire life. The well still had water in it, even though it tasted like metal and minerals. I drank it slowly and carefully, knowing that drinking too much too fast could make me very sick. Then I found the building that had the most protection from sun and wind and fell asleep immediately. I was so tired I could barely keep my eyes open. When I woke up, the sun was already going down again and someone was watching me. An old Bedouin man sat on the ground near the doorway. His face was wrinkled from many years in the sun, but his eyes were kind and curious. He spoke in Arabic, moving his hands toward me with worry on his face. I did not understand his words, but I understood his tone. He was asking if I was okay. American, I said, pointing at myself. Plus, family left me. I made a motion with my hands like people driving away in a car. His face got angry when he understood. He knew enough English to understand what I was trying to tell him, and apparently leaving family members alone in the desert was just as terrible to him as it should be to anyone who has a heart. Over the next 2 days, this kind stranger, whose name sounded like Ahmed when he said it, taught me basic things about surviving in the desert. How to collect morning dew for drinking water using pieces of cloth. Which plants you could eat and which plants would kill you. How to navigate by looking at the stars and reading small signs in the sand that showed which direction to go. He also gave me something I had not expected. He proved to me that I was stronger and tougher than I ever imagined. At 70 years old, I was learning survival skills that most people would think are impossible to learn at my age. On the second morning, Ahmed pointed toward the horizon and said something in Arabic, then pointed to himself and then to me. He was offering to take me back to civilization where there were people and cities. But as we got ready to leave the abandoned village, I made a decision that surprised even me. I asked him to wait for a minute while I did something very important. Using a piece of burned wood from an old fire pit, I wrote a message on the wall of the biggest building that was still standing. Emma and Brad left me here to die on September 25, 2024. If you find this and I do not survive, they murdered me for my inheritance. Dorothy Jean Walsh. Then I wrote it again in even bigger letters on a flat rock near the well where anyone could see it. Call it insurance, call it evidence, but mostly call it the first step in what was going to be the most satisfying revenge of my entire life. As Ahmed and I walked across the desert toward the main road where cars drove, I found myself almost looking forward to what would happen next. Emma and Brad thought they had gotten rid of the only thing standing between them and all that money. They had no idea they had just woken up something far more dangerous than a helpless old grandma. They had woken up a woman who had nothing left to lose and everything to prove. The truck that finally stopped for Ahmed and me was being driven by a French archaeologist named Dr. Pierre Dubois, who took one look at how I looked and immediately called for medical help on his radio. 3 days in the desert had left me dehydrated, with bad sunburn all over, and looking like I had been through hell, which honestly I had. "My God, what has happened to you?" Dr. Dubois asked as he helped me climb into his air-conditioned vehicle. The feeling of cool air was so wonderful I almost cried. "My family left me in the desert," I said simply. There was no point in making it sound nicer than it was. His face showed disbelief, then horror and finally anger. "That is attempted murder," he said very seriously. "We must get you to a hospital right away and contact the authorities immediately." As we drove toward Cairo, I found myself in the interesting position of having to convince people not to help me too much. Dr. Dubois wanted to call the police right away. The hospital workers wanted to keep me there for observation. The American consulate wanted to make a big international incident about it. But I had a different plan in my mind. I appreciate everyone's concern very much, I told the consulate official, a nervous young man named Michael Chen who looked like he had never dealt with anything more serious than a stolen passport. But I need to handle this situation my own way. Mrs. Walsh, your daughter and son-in-law, abandoned you in the desert. This is a very serious crime. Oh, I am very aware of what they did, I said. And they are going to pay for it, but not the way you think. What I did not tell Michael was that I had already made several phone calls from the hospital. The first call was to my lawyer in Ohio, Thomas Henderson, who nearly had a heart attack himself when he heard my voice. Dorothy, thank God you are alive. Emma and Brad reported you missing 3 days ago. They said you wandered away from your hotel and never came back. The Egyptian police have been searching everywhere for you. Thomas, I interrupted him. I need you to listen very carefully to what I am about to tell you. Emma and Brad tried to kill me. They drove me out into the desert and left me there to die. Do not, under any circumstances whatsoever, give them access to any of William's accounts or anything we own. There was a very long silence on the phone. My God, Dorothy, are you absolutely certain about this? I spent 3 days in the Sahara Desert with nothing but a water bottle and some crackers, Thomas. I am very certain about what happened. What do you want me to do? For now, nothing at all. Let them think their plan is working exactly how they wanted. But I need you to start preparing for serious legal action. And I need you to activate something William set up that I never thought I would have to use. The something William had set up was brilliant and so typical of my careful husband's planning. Hidden deep in our estate documents was a special rule that said if I ever died under suspicious circumstances, an automatic investigation would start and all our money and assets would be frozen until those circumstances were completely figured out. Emma and Brad had absolutely no idea this rule existed. My second call was to my bank in Ohio. This is Dorothy Walsh. I need to activate a fraud alert on all my accounts right this minute. Of course, Mrs. Walsh. What type of fraudulent activity are you concerned about? The type where my own family tries to steal my money after leaving me for dead in the desert. The bank lady, bless her heart, did not even pause or hesitate. I will flag everything in the system immediately. Should we expect someone to try to access the account soon? Oh yes, probably within the next few days. My third call was the most satisfying one of all. I dialed Emma's phone number and she answered on the very first ring. Hello. Her voice sounded tense and worried and scared. Hello, sweetheart. The silence that followed was so long I actually thought the phone call had dropped and disconnected. Mom, she finally whispered. But how is this possible? Where are you right now? I am in Cairo, Emma. Alive, in case you were wondering about that. Though I suppose that is not what you were hoping to hear. Mom, I do not understand what you are talking about. We have been looking everywhere for you. You disappeared from the hotel and nobody could find you. Cut the act right now, I said, and my voice was harder than I had ever heard it before. I know exactly what you and Brad did. The question now is, what happens next? Another very long silence. Then her voice came back, shaky and scared. Where have you been? Where you left me, Emma. In the desert. The difference is that I survived. I could hear Brad in the background, asking frantic questions in a loud voice. Emma's voice was shaking when she spoke again. Mom, I think there has been some kind of terrible misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding was mine, thinking you had any love or loyalty left for your family. But that is about to be corrected very soon. What do you mean by that? I mean that you and Brad just made the biggest mistake of your entire lives. You thought you were killing a helpless old woman. Instead, you have woken up someone who has nothing left to lose and unlimited resources for revenge. The phone line went quiet except for the sound of Emma's panicked breathing. Enjoy Cairo, sweetheart, I continued. But do not get too comfortable there. You are about to learn that stealing from your family is much harder than you thought, especially when that family member is still alive to stop you. I hung up the phone before she could respond. Dr. Du Bois had been right about one thing. What Emma and Brad had done was attempted murder, but legal prosecution in court would be quick and clean, over in a matter of months. What I had in mind was going to last much, much longer than that. Over the next 3 days, while I recovered in a luxury hotel in Cairo that I paid for with a credit card that Emma and Brad definitely could not access, I put the rest of my plan into action. First, I hired a private investigator in Ohio to dig deep into Brad's background and find out everything about him. What I learned was absolutely fascinating. Brad Morrison was not just a gold digger looking for rich women. He was a professional con artist with a long history of targeting wealthy older women for their money. My 24-year-old daughter was not his first victim, just his most recent one. Second, I discovered that Brad was in debt to some very dangerous and unpleasant people in Atlantic City to the tune of $1.4 million. His plan to steal my inheritance was not just about greed and wanting more. It was about survival. Third, and most importantly of all, I learned something about myself that I never knew before. After 70 years of being the dutiful wife, the accommodating mother, the person who always put everyone else first, I discovered I had a real natural talent for strategic thinking and planning revenge. William used to say that the best revenge is living well. But sometimes the best revenge is watching your enemies destroy themselves while you pull all the strings. From my hotel room with a beautiful view of the Nile River, I started making more phone calls. By the time Emma and Brad figured out what was really happening, it would be too late for them. The game was just beginning, and for the first time in many months, I was actually enjoying myself. Emma and Brad did not know I was watching from across the street when they stumbled out of the Egyptian police station at 3 o'clock in the morning looking exhausted and desperate. They had been questioned for 8 hours, answering questions about my disappearance that had suddenly become much more complicated now that I had reappeared and was very much alive. I had spent the day working with the authorities, but not in the way Dr. Dubois and the consulate official expected me to. Instead of pressing charges immediately and having them arrested, I told the police a carefully edited version of events that made Emma and Brad look confused and panicked, but not malicious or evil. I think there was a big miscommunication, I had explained to the detective in charge. They thought I was back at the hotel when they left me. When they could not find me anywhere, they naturally assumed the worst had happened. The detective looked very skeptical about my story. Mrs. Walsh, leaving someone in the desert without transportation or supplies is a very serious mistake. It is a terrible mistake, I agreed. But I am not completely sure it was done on purpose. My daughter is not a killer, officer. She is just young and easily influenced by her husband. What I did not tell the detective was that I had already gathered enough evidence to destroy them both through the legal system. But legal channels would be quick and impersonal. What I wanted was to watch them unravel slowly, completely, and publicly in front of everyone. After they left the police station, I followed them back to their hotel in a taxi. The look on Brad's face as they walked through the lobby was pure panic and fear. Whatever plan he had made was falling apart around him, and he was starting to realize that abandoning me in the desert might have been the worst decision of his entire life. I gave them 1 hour to settle into their room and calm down. Then I knocked on their door. Brad answered, and all the color drained from his face when he saw me standing there. Dorothy, hello Brad. May I please come in? We need to have a talk. Emma appeared behind him, and her eyes were red from crying for hours. She looked like she had aged 10 years in just 1 week. Mom, she said, and her voice was barely a whisper. I'm so sorry. I do not know what came over us. Brad said you would be fine, that someone would find you quickly. And I just believed him, and you just decided to trust your husband over your own mother, I said, walking into the room and settling into the only chair. How did that work out for you? Brad was pacing back and forth like a trapped animal in a cage. Look, Dorothy, I know how this looks, but please sit down, Brad. Something in my voice made him obey me immediately. I have had several very interesting conversations over the past few days. I continued calmly. With my lawyer, my bank, some private investigators, and even some people in Atlantic City who have been looking for you for quite some time. Brad went completely still and stopped moving. Did you really think I would not find out about the gambling debts? About the other women you have scammed over the years? About the fact that you are facing serious criminal charges in New Jersey that you have been running away from for the past 2 years? Emma stared at her husband with wide eyes. What gambling debts? What other women? "Oh, he did not tell you about any of that?" I asked with fake surprise in my voice. "Brad owes $1.4 million to some very unpleasant people who do not accept payment plans or excuses. He needed my inheritance not just because he is greedy, but because his kneecaps and his life depend on getting that money." The look of complete betrayal on Emma's face was almost worth the 3 days in the desert. "Almost, but not quite. That is not true, Emma. Tell her that is not true, Brad." Brad could not look her in the eyes. "And what about the other women?" I continued, really enjoying myself now. "Let me see if I can remember them all. There was Mrs. Patterson in Miami. You got $450,000 from her. Mrs. Liu in Seattle. You took $275,000 from her. And my personal favorite, Mrs. Blackwood in Boston, who you actually married and divorced in the same year, walking away with half of everything she owned." Emma sank down onto the bed, staring at Brad like she had never seen him before in her life. "You have been married before." "Actually, he is still married to Mrs. Blackwood," I said. "Which means his marriage to you is not even legal. But do not worry too much, sweetheart, because that is the least of your problems right now." Brad finally found his voice. "What do you want from us, Dorothy?" "What do I want?" I laughed, and it was not a nice, pleasant sound. "I want to watch you both face the consequences of your actions. I want Emma to understand what happens when you try to murder your own mother for money. And I want you, Brad, to experience what it feels like when someone more powerful than you decides to destroy your entire life." "We did not try to murder you," Emma protested weakly. "You left me in the desert with almost no water, no transportation, and no way to call for help. What exactly did you think would happen to me out there?" The silence in the hotel room stretched between us like a rubber band. "Here is what is going to happen now," I said, standing up from the chair. "Tomorrow morning, you are both going to go to the American Embassy where you are going to confess exactly what you did to me. Emma, you are going to call every single person you told lies to about my disappearance, and you are going to correct the record and tell them the truth." "And what if we refuse to do that?" Brad asked me. I smiled at him, and I could see him actually flinch at whatever he saw in my expression. "If you do not do exactly what I say, those men from Atlantic City are going to get a very interesting phone call about exactly where you have been hiding. My bank is going to press charges for attempted fraud. The Egyptian authorities are going to learn that you are a fugitive from American justice, and the private investigator I hired is going to release a very detailed report about your entire criminal history to every major newspaper in Ohio." Brad was sweating now, and I could see drops on his forehead. "You cannot do that to us. Just watch me try." I pulled out my phone and showed them a photo I had taken that morning. It was the message I had written on the wall of that abandoned Bedouin village in charcoal. Clear evidence of exactly what they had done. This little note is now in the hands of the Egyptian police, the American consulate, and my attorney back home. It is what lawyers call evidence of premeditated murder. I also left GPS coordinates so the authorities can verify the exact location where you abandoned me to die. Emma was crying again, big tears running down her face. "Mom, please. I know we made a terrible mistake, but you have to understand. This was not a mistake, Emma. This was attempted murder motivated by pure greed. And the only reason you are sorry right now is because you got caught and your plan failed." I walked to the door, then turned back to look at them one more time. "You have until tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock to decide what kind of consequences you want to face. The easy ones that I am offering, or the hard ones that will destroy your lives completely. But either way, one thing is certain. You are going to face serious consequences for what you did." As I left their hotel room, I could hear Emma screaming at Brad, demanding to know what else he had lied to her about. The sound was absolutely music to my ears. The next morning, I treated myself to a wonderful breakfast on the hotel terrace with a beautiful view of the Nile River. The sun was shining bright and warm. The coffee was excellent and tasted perfect. And somewhere across the city, two people who had tried to kill me were discovering exactly how much power a determined woman with unlimited resources could wield against them. Emma had called me 5 times already that morning. I was not answering any of her calls. Brad had called twice. I had answered one of those calls just so I could hang up on him immediately. By noon, they would be at the embassy confessing everything they had done. By evening, they would be on a plane back to Ohio, where a very different kind of justice would be waiting for them with open arms. But the best part of all this, they still had absolutely no idea what I had planned for them when we all got back home. The beautiful thing about having real money, the kind of generational wealth that Tyler and Madison had tried to steal from me, is that you can afford to be very patient. You can hire the best people money can buy, wait for the perfect moment, and strike with precision that leaves your enemies completely and totally destroyed. 4 weeks after returning from Egypt, I was sitting in the office of Harrison Security and Investigations, Ohio's most prestigious and expensive private investigation firm. The thick folder in front of me on the desk contained enough information to end Brad's life as he knew it, and seriously damage Emma's life as well. "Mrs. Walsh," Harrison said, leaning back in his expensive leather chair, "I have to admit, this is the most comprehensive revenge operation I have ever been hired to execute in my entire career." "I prefer to think of it as justice," I replied calmly, sipping my coffee. "What is our timeline looking like?" Harrison opened his laptop computer. Brad's creditors in Atlantic City received an anonymous tip about his exact location yesterday afternoon. They will be in Ohio by Friday at the latest. His illegal marriage status has been reported to the appropriate authorities. Bigamy charges will be filed Monday morning at 9 o'clock, and his probation officer in New Jersey, who apparently had no idea where he had been for the past 2 years, is very interested in having a long conversation with him. And what about Emma? The IRS received some very interesting information about unreported income and tax evasion. Apparently, Brad has been using her social security number for some very creative and illegal financial arrangements. She is looking at serious federal charges that could mean years in prison. I nodded, feeling a deep satisfaction that I had not expected to feel. For weeks ago, I would have felt terrible and guilty about destroying my own daughter's life like this. Now, after surviving 3 days in the desert and discovering exactly what my 24-year-old daughter was capable of doing to her own mother, I felt nothing but cold determination and resolve. "There is more," Harrison continued. "We traced Brad's pattern of criminal behavior back 9 years. 15 different women, combined losses of over $4.2 million. The FBI is very interested in what we have uncovered about his activities. When will they arrest him?" "Very soon. But here is where it gets really interesting for you. Brad does not know about any of this yet. According to our surveillance team, he and Emma are still desperately trying to figure out how to access your accounts legally without getting caught." That made me actually laugh out loud. "They are still trying to steal from me even now. Apparently, your son-in-law is not very good at learning from his mistakes or taking hints." What Emma and Brad did not know was that I had been 3 steps ahead of them since the exact moment I walked out of that desert alive. While they had been panicking and making desperate phone calls to lawyers, I had been systematically dismantling their entire lives with the precision of a master chess player who knows every move. The first move in my plan had been financial. Within hours of my return to Ohio, every single account William had set up was locked down tighter than Fort Knox itself. Brad's attempts to access anything had been carefully monitored and recorded, providing perfect evidence of his criminal intent that would hold up in any court. The second move had been legal. My attorney, Thomas Henderson, had filed papers that not only protected all my assets completely, but also initiated civil lawsuits against both Brad and Emma for attempted murder, fraud, and elder abuse. The criminal charges would come later, after we had gathered enough evidence to ensure convictions that would stick. The third move had been personal and deeply satisfying. I had hired a public relations firm to prepare a very carefully crafted media campaign. In exactly 1 week from today, Brad Morrison's face would be on every local news channel and in every major newspaper in the state, identified as a serial con artist who specialized in targeting elderly women for their money. "Mrs. Walsh," Harrison said, pulling me back to the present moment, "there is something else very important you should know. We have been monitoring their communications closely, and Brad is planning to leave the country and run away." "When is he planning to leave?" "Tonight. He has booked a flight to Mexico under a fake identity using a stolen passport." I stood up from my chair, suddenly feeling energized and alert. Can we stop him from leaving? We can do better than that, Harrison said with a smile. We can let him get all the way to the airport, go through security, and then have him arrested right at the gate for probation violation, fraud, using a fake passport, and fleeing to avoid prosecution. Maximum humiliation in front of everyone. Maximum media coverage of his arrest. Absolutely perfect. That evening, I drove to Emma's apartment, the same apartment I had helped her pay rent for every single month, I might add, and knocked firmly on the door. She answered looking absolutely terrible, with dark circles under her eyes and messy hair. Mom, thank God you are here. Brad has gone completely crazy. He is talking about leaving the country tonight, and I do not understand what is happening anymore. He says dangerous people are after him and he has to run away. And where is he right now, Emma? He is at the airport. Mom, I am really scared. I think Brad might have done terrible things that I did not know about. Really bad things. I looked at my daughter, this young woman who had stood by silently while her husband tried to murder me in the desert, and I felt a strange mix of pity and complete disgust. Brad is a career criminal, Emma. He has been scamming elderly women out of their money for years and years, and you helped him try to kill me for my inheritance. Did you really think there would not be serious consequences for doing that? Her face completely crumpled and she started sobbing. I did not know about the other women. I swear on my life I did not know about any of them. Brad told me you were going to waste our inheritance on charities and strangers. He said we had to act quickly before you spend it all on things that did not matter. Our inheritance. I stepped into her apartment without being invited or asking permission. Emma, let me explain something very important to you that you do not seem to understand. You do not have an inheritance anymore. After what you did to me in Egypt, you do not have a mother anymore either. What do you mean by that? I handed her a legal document I had been carrying in my purse. This is a formal disinheritance notice prepared by my lawyer. You will get absolutely nothing when I die. Not a single penny. Emma read the document with shaking hands that could barely hold the paper. You cannot do this to me. I am your only child. You stopped being my child the moment you left me to die alone in that desert. My phone buzzed with an incoming text message. A text from Harrison that said, "Package successfully delivered at gate 17. Customer very unhappy with our service." I smiled to myself. That was notification that Brad had just been arrested at the airport. That was a message telling me that your husband has been taken into custody. I told Emma calmly. He is facing serious criminal charges in 4 different states now, including attempted murder here and in Egypt. The FBI is also very interested in talking to him about his pattern of targeting and scamming elderly women for nearly a decade. Emma sank down onto her couch, and the legal document fell from her hands onto the floor. I do not understand any of this. How did you do all this by yourself? How did I do all this, sweetheart? I survived for 45 years married to one of the shrewdest and smartest financial minds in Ohio. Did you really think I was some helpless old woman you could outsmart and manipulate? But the desert, Mom. You could have died out there all alone. I could have died, that is true. I almost did die. And if I had died, you and Brad would have been millionaires with all my money. That was your entire plan, was it not? Emma was crying now. Great heaving sobs that shook her entire body and made her shoulders shake. I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so incredibly sorry. Brad said he told me he made it sound like what exactly? Like I deserved to die so you could have my money. She could not answer me because she knew it was true. I walked over to her window and looked out at the Ohio skyline, the city where I had built a whole life with William, where I had raised this ungrateful daughter, where I had thought I would live out my remaining years in peace and happiness. You know what the real irony is, Emma? If you had just been patient and loving, if you had just been a good daughter, you would have inherited everything eventually when I died naturally. William's entire estate planning was designed to take care of you comfortably for the rest of your life. It is not too late, Emma said desperately, grabbing my arm. I can make this right somehow. I can testify against Brad in court. I can tell them everything. Can cooperate fully. It is far too late for that now. I turned back to face her directly, and she actually flinched at whatever she saw in my expression. Brad's arrest is just the very beginning of everything. Over the next 8 months, you are both going to face criminal charges, civil lawsuits, federal investigations, and public humiliation that will follow you for the rest of your lives wherever you go. Mom, please. You have to understand. I am not your mother anymore, Emma. I am the woman whose murder you planned and whose money you tried to steal. And I am the woman who is going to make absolutely sure you both pay dearly for what you did. I left Emma sobbing alone in her apartment and drove home to the house I had shared with William for so many happy years. For the first time since his sudden death, I felt truly at peace with everything. Brad was in jail. Emma would join him there soon. Justice was not just coming someday. It was here right now. But the best part of everything was still to come. 8 months later, I was sitting in a courtroom watching Brad Morrison accept a plea deal for 10 years in federal prison for elder fraud, attempted murder, identity theft, and running a multi-state con operation that had destroyed many lives. Emma sat in the defendant's chair right next to him, tearfully accepting her own 4-year sentence for conspiracy, attempted murder, and being an accessory to fraud. The transformation in both of them was absolutely remarkable to see. Brad, who had once been so charming and confident and sure of himself, looked completely broken and defeated. Emma had aged what looked like 10 years in just 8 months, her youthful face now hollow and empty with the weight of what she had done. When the judge asked if they had anything to say before accepting their plea deals, Brad slowly stood up from his chair. "Your Honor, I want to apologize to Mrs. Walsh and to all the women I have hurt over the years with my crimes. I know there is nothing I can say to make up for what I did, but I want her to know that I am genuinely sorry." The judge turned to look at me. "Mrs. Walsh, would you like to make a statement to the court?" I stood up slowly, feeling the weight of everyone's attention focused on me. For a long moment, I looked directly at Emma and Brad, these two people who had tried to murder me for money and ended up destroying their own lives instead. "Your Honor, 8 months ago, these two people left me to die in the desert because they wanted my husband's money desperately. They thought they were dealing with a helpless old widow who would be easy to get rid of." I paused, letting that statement sink in for everyone in the courtroom. They were wrong on every single count. I was not helpless. I was not easy to get rid of. And most importantly, the money they were so desperate to steal was never going to be theirs in the first place. I pulled out a document from my purse and handed it to the court clerk. "This is my husband's original will, written 6 years ago. In it, he specifically disinherits Emma if she ever attempts to harm me or steal from our estate in any way. William was a brilliant man who understood exactly what kind of person our daughter might become someday." Emma's face went completely white like she had seen a ghost. "That is impossible. I never saw any will like that." "Because we never told you about it," I said calmly. "William hoped he would never have to use that provision. But apparently he understood human nature much better than I did." The judge carefully reviewed the document. "Mrs. Walsh, this appears to be a completely valid legal provision. It is valid, which means that even if their plan had somehow succeeded, even if they had managed to kill me, Emma would have inherited absolutely nothing from us. The entire estate was specifically designed to go to charity if anything suspicious ever happened to me." The silence in the courtroom was so complete you could hear a pin drop. "So you see, Your Honor, they did not just try to commit murder. They tried to commit a completely pointless murder. They were willing to kill me for money they were never going to get in the first place." I turned to face Emma directly, looking right into her eyes. "You traded your mother's life for an inheritance that never existed. You chose a criminal con artist over your own family. And now you will spend the next 4 years in prison thinking about that choice every single day." Emma was sobbing uncontrollably, but I felt absolutely nothing inside. The woman who had raised her, who had loved her unconditionally for 24 years, was gone forever. She died in that desert along with any maternal feelings I had left. Brad, meanwhile, was staring at me with something that looked almost like respect in his eyes. "You planned all of this from the very beginning," he said quietly. "From the moment we left you in the desert, you knew exactly what you were going to do to us." "I told you that first night in Cairo that you had woken up something dangerous," I replied. "I told you that you had made the biggest mistake of your entire lives. You chose not to listen to my warning. The judge brought down his gavel with a loud bang, and it was over. Brad would spend the next 10 years in federal prison. Emma would spend 4 years thinking about what she had done. And I would spend the rest of my life living exactly as I pleased, accountable to no one and threatened by no one. As they led Brad and Emma away in handcuffs, I felt a gentle tap on my shoulder. Harrison, my private investigator, was standing behind me with a satisfied smile on his face. "How does it feel, Mrs. Walsh?" "Exactly like I thought it would feel," I replied honestly. "Like pure justice." That evening, I treated myself to dinner at the best and most expensive restaurant in the entire city. I ordered champagne and the most expensive item on the entire menu, and I sat by the window watching the city lights twinkle and shine below. Tomorrow I would start the next chapter of my life. I was thinking seriously about travel. Maybe a proper trip to Egypt, one where nobody tried to murder me. Maybe a Mediterranean cruise through Greece and Italy. Maybe I would buy a beautiful house in Tuscany or the south of France, somewhere warm and beautiful where I could spend my golden years in peace. The money that Brad and Emma had tried to kill me for was still mine, all $330 million of it. But more importantly, I had learned something valuable about myself in that hot desert. I was stronger than I had ever imagined, smarter than anyone had given me credit for, and absolutely ruthless when someone threatened what was mine. William would have been so proud of me. As I raised my champagne glass in a silent toast to my late husband, I thought about the message I had written on that crumbling wall in the abandoned Bedouin village. "If you find this and I do not survive, they murdered me for my inheritance." But I had survived against all odds, and I had done so much more than just survive. I had triumphed completely and totally. The desert had tried to kill me. My own family had betrayed me in the worst way possible, and I had emerged stronger than ever before. At 70 years old, I had learned that it is never too late to discover what you are really capable of doing. And what I was capable of, apparently, was absolutely magnificent revenge. Now, I am curious about you who are listening to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar to this? Please comment below and tell me. And meanwhile, I am leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites here on Granny's Voice, and they will definitely surprise you in ways you cannot imagine. Thank you so much for watching until the very end. I really appreciate it. Do not forget to subscribe to Granny's Voice and feel free to share your own story in the comments section. Your voice matters to me. Until next time, this is Dorothy reminding you that you are never too old to fight back, and you are never too weak to win. Stay strong, stay smart, and never let anyone make you feel helpless. Goodbye for now.